Hello everyone, welcome to Chetan Bharat Learning. In this video, we are going to cover the current affairs related to social issues and social justice, the society portion of your UPSC syllabus that had been in news from 10th of September to 17th of September. First of all, let us have a look over the kind of issues that we'll be covering in today's class. The first issue is related to pregnancy and newborns in the COVID scenario. How COVID has affected antenatal mothers and the newborns. What are the possibilities of COVID affecting newborns through their mothers? So in that context, there was this article in The Hindu, we'll be covering that. Then in the Yojana issue of this month, September 2020, there was an article regarding early childhood care and education in the context of new educational policy, the new national educational policy. We'll be covering that. Then again, an article in Hindu regarding digital divide, how COVID scenario has heightened, it has increased the need for access to digital resources. The entire education system, it has shifted to the online platform to a very large extent. But still, in our country, there are significant areas, there are significant proportion of areas and the population that is not having access to the internet and other forms of digital infrastructure. So in that context, we'll be covering this article. And last, the plea for legal entity status to animals. A plea has been filed in Supreme Court regarding this issue that animals should be given legal status, legal entity status. So we'll see what is the stand of Supreme Court and what it has done and what this legal entity is. So let us start with our first topic, pregnancy and newborns in the COVID scenario. Now there are there can be two issues related to this aspect, pregnancy and newborns in the COVID scenario. One is the medical management of pregnancy, that what guidelines health workers should follow while treating the newborns, while treating the antenatal mothers, what should the hospitals do in dealing with this situation, how proper care should be taken of the antenatal mothers and the newborns. In this context, already WHO and ICMR, WHO in the international context, and Indian Council of Medical Research has issued certain guidelines, and that they are mostly being followed also. But the article was dealing with the second aspect, the advisability of deliberately delaying the pregnancy. The COVID scenario poses certain risks to the newborns. In light of those risks, the article was trying to advocate that the pregnancy should be deliberately delayed, deliberately postponed. So we'll see what are the issues related to this, why the article was saying that the pregnancy should be deliberately postponed. The concerns related to this aspect. First of all is the general behavior of the coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2 virus, the coronavirus. It has a greater tendency to affect the vascular organs. We know that the coronavirus, largely it affects lungs. It has more effect on the respiratory system. Along with the lungs, it also affects certain other vascular organs. What are the vascular organs? Which have very large supply of blood vessels. Very large supply of blood vessels. Now, if we take the case of lungs only, lungs has very large supply of blood vessels in order to aid the exchange of gases. Oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange takes place in lungs. To aid this exchange of gases, lungs has very large supply of blood vessels. All the organs, in fact, that have this large supply of blood vessels are known as vascular organs, and they are under threat. They are under the possible effect of the possible impact of the coronavirus. One such organ is placenta, that is unique to the pregnant mothers. This is the tissue that provides nutrition to the fetus from the mother's body. The nutrients from the mother's body, the nutritions from the mother body is transferred to the fetus through this tissue placenta. And it is also a vascular organ. It has, for the obvious reasons, it has very large supply of blood vessels. Since placenta is a vascular organ and COVID virus has the increasing tendency, has more tendency to affect the vascular organs, it is speculated that this tissue might be possibly affected by the coronavirus. And what is the threat in this regard? there was this study conducted among the Indian maternity hospitals, and it was found that around 8 to 10% mothers are COVID infected. Already around 10% of the mothers that are invariably visiting the maternity hospitals, the nursing homes, around 10% of them are affected with coronavirus. Now they may be asymptomatic, but their developed body would be better suited to respond to coronavirus, but the fetus might not be as suited to deal with the coronavirus. So this possibility is always there, and this is one of the concerns as far as the antenatal mothers are concerned in the COVID scenario. So first implication is related to this aspect only, that fetus or the newborn might contract the COVID virus. But in this case, again, facts and data comes to our aid. It has been found, in the study it has been found that only 1.4% of the newborns, 10% of the mothers, they were affected by COVID. But only 1.4% of such mothers had transmitted the virus to the newborns. So the possibility of virus being transmitted to the newborns directly by their mothers is very less, as the data and facts show. But there is a second issue associated with this. What is that? The risk of congenital abnormalities. What are these congenital abnormalities? The abnormalities acquired at the time of birth. The abnormalities that are present right from the birth. The abnormalities that develop during the childbirth procedure, during the pregnancy also. Now, in this context, why we are saying this, that there is a possibility of congenital abnormalities? First of all, as far as COVID is concerned, as far as coronavirus is concerned, no study has been done on this aspect. But we have studies regarding Zika virus, we have studies regarding rubella virus. The studies around about these viruses, Zika virus and rubella virus, they show that the risk of congenital abnormalities increases if the mother is affected by these viruses. We had, in the last class, we had covered that rubella virus is part of the universal immunization program of Government of India. This was included in this program only because of this thing. WHO had done the studies, and we had included rubella virus in our immunization program because this could lead to development of congenital abnormalities. So we have studies with respect to these viruses, not with respect to coronavirus. But of course, viruses have similar characteristics, and it is speculated that this may, like coronavirus, may also lead to risk of congenital abnormalities. And in this context, we have to keep in mind that first trimester is the most important period. There are 3 trimesters of pregnancy. The first trimester is the most important period because this is the period that leads to development of organs in the fetus. If the mother is affected by coronavirus in the first trimester, the probability of the fetus developing congenital abnormalities is more. So more care should be taken to protect the mother from the virus, the social distancing, the usual measures that we adopt in case of corona during the first trimester. We'll come to this aspect, that what can be done in this scenario. First of all, you should know what are the implications of the findings. First thing that can be done is, like the article that was proposing, is deliberately postponing the pregnancy using the family planning measures. Using the family planning measures like contraceptions, etc. The use of these should be increased. Now the article was trying to emphasize additional benefit of this deliberate postponing of pregnancy. If the women will not be, like less number of women will be pregnant, then what would it lead to? It would lead to lower load on our health system. Hospitals are already overburdened with the corona cases and the dealing with this pandemic. So if lesser number of women would be pregnant, then it would lead to lower load on the health system. Additional benefit from the point of view of the women, from the point of view of families, would be lower possibility of contracting hospital-borne virus. Lower probability of contracting hospital-based infection, hospital-borne infection. Now we have seen that in many cases, a healthy person goes to hospital because of the situation there, because of the prevalence of the positive people over there. The person contracts virus. This thing would also be negated. This possibility will also be lowered if there would be lesser number of pregnant women. So this was the line of argument that was proposed in the article, that the pregnancy should be deliberately postponed if possible. But in case a woman contracts, still the person conceives, then what should be done? Now this is something contradictory that was given in the article. The two things that are being recommended. One is, but like they make sense also. They seem to be contradicting, but they make sense. Kaise? First thing that the article says is the person should practice strict home quarantine, strict home isolation. The lesser people the person would be in contact with, lesser would be the possibility of that person contracting virus, because social distancing, as of now, social distancing is the only vaccine against this virus. And this thing has to be taken even more seriously during the first trimester of the pregnancy, because we have seen that this is the most important period as far as the development of organs in a fetus is concerned. So strict home isolation during the first trimester. The other thing that is being recommended that can be done is more frequent follow-ups. Why so? Again, we had discussed that there is a possibility that it may lead to congenital abnormalities. How do we get to know of congenital abnormalities? By proper follow-ups, by proper scans and things like that. So there should be more frequent follow-ups by the antenatal mothers. This could this could check the abnormalities well in time. So these are the two things that were recommended by this article. I hope this article now makes sense to you. So now we'll be moving to our next topic. Next issue is early childhood care and education in the context of new national education policy. First of all, a word or two about this new national education policy. The earlier national education policy was promulgated in 1986. Now, in July 2020, the new national education policy was promulgated. What is the, we are not discussing the national education policy over here. What we are discussing over here is the issue of early childhood care and education, and how does this new national education policy tries to address this issue. What are the issues associated with this this early childhood education and care? It has always received inadequate education. Previously, our education, till now, our education system, basically it starts from class 1 onward. Class 1 to class 12, you have the 12 years of 10 plus 2 system of education. A child who is of 5 or 6 years of age is directly admitted to class 1 and follows the system till class 12. Now, in this system, what about the period 0 to 6 years? What about this period? This period has received inadequate attention, but this period, as far as the mental development of a child is concerned, this is the most important period, because this is the period when 85% of the brain development takes place. and this period is ignored in our existing educational framework. Now, that is not to say that no policy framework exists as of today. Already we have a National Early Childhood Care and Education Policy 2013. But this policy, the implementation of this policy is not that strict, and the things that are recommended in this policy, they are also like not up to the mark. Also, we know that we have the right to education. When right to education was made a fundamental right, what was there in this fundamental right? That every children who is from 6 to 14 years of age has the fundamental right to education. When this right to education was made fundamental right, a change was also done in context of DPSPs, Directive Principles of State Policy. Earlier, this aspect was part of the DPSPs. When the state was capable enough, it had shifted one of its DPSPs, the education related DPSPs, from DPSPs to fundamental rights, from non-justiciable rights to justiciable rights. A change was also done in context of DPSPs. Early childhood care was made part of the DPSPs. Now, this is the framework that was regulating the early childhood care and education till now, but the implementation had not been up to the mark. So, what does this new national education policy proposes to do? Like the first thing that you should again keep in mind is that there are many private players that are already existing in this sector, but there is no regulation, there is no regulatory framework to guide these private players. We have seen many crashes, we have seen many play schools, we have seen many preschools that are mushrooming in different urban centers of India, but no regulatory framework is trying to guide these private players. Moreover, these private players that are already in this sector, most of these private players, they are in the urban centers. So rural population is deprived of such facilities, and in the urban centers also there is a divide along the socio-economic status, the socio-economic class. The upper classes, the middle classes, they are availing these services, but the people from the lower strata, they are increasingly excluded from this part of the education. They simply, like if you are joining a government school, you simply start your education from class 1 when you are 5 or 6 years of age. What about that early period? So there is great divide in this context. So now we come to that aspect. What does this new national education policy proposes? First of all, it aims for universalization of early childhood care and education by 2030. It has set a modest target that by 2030, we aim to have universal early childhood care and education. A very important structural change that it proposes is that let us replace the 10+2 system that we had talked of earlier by a new system, like they are saying 5+3+3+4 system. What is this 5+3+3+4 system? They are saying let us first have 3 years of preschool, playway school, plus your 2 classes, class 1 and class 2 of your regular school. This should be considered as first stage of education. The 3 years of preschool plus class 1 and class 2 of your regular school. This should be considered as first stage of education. From the age 2 or 3 to age 5 to 6. Then your regular school classes 3, 4 and 5. Then again your regular school classes 6, 7 and 8. And this last section is classes 9th, 10th, 11th and 12th. So this is the structural change that is being proposed by new national education policy. And the benefit of this new educational structure is that this corresponds to the developmental stages of the children, developmental stages of a child, development stages of a human. Like the way human mind develops, way the cognitive growth happens. This structure is in accordance with that timetable. So this is one of the positive change that is proposed by the new national education policy. Now, what are the challenges? What are the future course of action? How can we, like these proposals that are made in the new national education policy, can actually bring the real fruit? Issues concerned. What are the issues concerned in this context? Training of teachers, availability of curriculum, what to teach, who will teach, and then how to regulate the one existing issue that we had already discussed. How can we regulate the existing players, the private players? So these are the three issues that we have to take care of if we want that this new approach, that this new national education policy should be able to bring the real fruits, should be able to actually address the problem of early childhood care, the deficiencies in the early childhood care and education. Now the policy itself says that this new curriculum will be developed by the NCERT. Now let's see what kind of curriculum NCERT comes up with. The second aspect, again, training of teachers and care providers. In this context, policy talks of the online courses, online training that would be provided to certain educators and the teachers. Now, how effective this certification would be, how effective this training would be, and what kind of teachers would actually be admitted to these institutions that would be providing early childhood care, that is a matter of speculation. Last aspect is regulation of the private players. Till now, we do not have any regulatory framework, and even the new national education policy leaves this as a blank area, leaves this as a loophole in the policy, that nothing has been recommended in this context. So if these issues, these challenges can be addressed, then we can successfully come up with a healthy and vibrant youth population. And as they say that the future of the country is in the children. The country and the society that invests in its children will bear the fruits of development. Now, with this, we'll be moving to our next topic: digital disconnect, online learning and digital divide. This was the article that was in the Hindu of this week. Recently, what is the context of this article? Recently, the report of NSO's survey of household social consumption on education in India was published. This survey was related to this period from July 2017 to June 2018. And in this report, in this survey, it has been highlighted that there exists a digital divide between different states of India and across the people from different socio-economic classes. Now let us see some of the data, some of the results of this survey. It says that only in Delhi, HP and Kerala, the internet access was more than 50% if we combine the rural and urban households. On the state level basis, only 3 states have 50% of their population that has access to the internet related services and other forms of digital infrastructure. In the states like Punjab, Haryana and Uttarakhand, the rate was around 40%. It was more than 40%, between 40 to 50%. Now, except for these regions, in the rest of the country, the access to digital infrastructure, the access to internet was even less than 40%. The penetration of internet is less than 40%. Now, we are not talking the penetration of internet to villages. Here we are dealing with at the household level. This survey was done at the household level, household social consumption on education in India. Except for these 3 states and UTs, in the entire India, the access to internet, the penetration of internet is less than 40%. And in the larger states like UP, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka, the access was below 20%. So what this data points out? This data points out that there exists a sharp digital divide. While in the COVID scenario, we have seen that increasingly education is being delivered from online platforms. But if so many people, so many households would be excluded from the digital infrastructure, how would they access the online education? How would they be getting benefit from the digital learning, online learning? So this is one issue that was highlighted. Again, implications is access to online education and learning during the COVID scenario. Another aspect is, even if the other forms of digital infrastructure are available, say internet is available, say let us even assume that mobile phones, laptops and such like things are available. What about power? We know that the interior regions of our country, the inaccessible regions of their country, they are having power shortages also, they are experiencing power shortages also. So even if you have internet, even if you have other forms of digital infrastructure, the power deficit, the power cuts, they can significantly affect your access to learning, the effective access to the digital resources. So these are the implications of this issue. What can we do? What the government of India has already done and what more needs to be done? Already we have this National Optical Fiber Network program. It intended to join all our 250,000 panchayats by a network of optical fiber. This scheme was launched during the UPA regime. Eventually, this scheme was upgraded to the BharatNet scheme. Again, all the village panchayats, all the gram panchayats, they were to be connected by the optical fiber network, but not necessarily optical network fiber. The fiber network could be underground, overground, broadband, satellite, multiple things were included as part of this BharatNet program. But the idea was that all the village panchayats had to be connected by internet. So these are the existing programs, and the target of connectivity was till 2019. By 2019, all the panchayats had to be connected by some form of digital connectivity, either broadband or the optical fibers, or the optical fibers, underground optical fibers, and the cable, say electricity poles could be co-opted to provide the optical cable connectivity, or the satellite connectivity, or such like things. But it's 2020 already and we have missed this deadline also. So we need to increase, we need to give a greater push to this connectivity issue. And in this context, Prime Minister Modi, in his Independence Day speech, he had declared that all the villages would be connected with optical fiber cable in 1000 days. That's like more 3 years. So by 2023, we can expect that all the villages would be connected with optical fiber. When this thing would be done, only then we can expect that the fruits of online learning would be available to all the sections of Indian society, all the regions of our country, India. And in this context, there are certain lessons that we can learn from globe. Already this new technology called wireless fiber is in use. What does it involve? What is the benefit of using optical fiber? That large amount of data can be transmitted. They will have the more speeds, internet speeds would be better, the data transmission speeds would be better, the more amount of data can be transmitted, and the network would be more economical. All these benefits are sought to be replicated in the form of a wireless network also. They are trying to use high capacity spectrums. Now, how does wireless data gets transmitted? We use the electromagnetic spectrum to transport data, to transfer data. You might have heard this SU band, S band, Q band. So there are different bands of the electromagnetic spectrum that we use to transmit data. So some electromagnetic spectrum, certain portion of electromagnetic spectrum has more capacity to transmit data and the other portions have less capacity to transmit data. So why haven't we been using this high capacity portion of the electromagnetic spectrum? Because it uses the technology that is not yet fully developed. So this wireless fiber technology is being talked of. It uses high capacity spectrums on the global scale. But of course, since it is a new technology, it is a capital intensive project and as well as it is a technologically intensive project. So India as of now is facing difficulties in acquiring this technology. So we are focusing right now on the optical fiber network only. But this is one thing that we can take lessons from the globe, that we can also have this wireless fiber technology in providing access to internet to the inaccessible areas, to the far-flung areas of India. Now moving to the last topic, the plea for legal entity status to animals. Like I said earlier, a plea was filed in Supreme Court demanding legal entity status to the animals. What is this legal entity status? Or legal personality. If an entity is accorded this status, the entity can sue or can be sued. Ram kills Sham. State, like it is alleged that Ram killed Sham. State, the police would arrest Ram and would file a case against Ram. So Ram is an individual against whom the court proceedings would be initiated and probably he would be found guilty or he would be found innocent in that case, and in whatever manner the court proceedings would be held, as the case may be. Say ABC Company Limited, ABC Private Limited has not filed tax with the government of India, the due tax with government of India. So government of India would sue ABC Private Limited. Now ABC Private Limited is not an individual. It is a company, but it is a legal entity. It can sue and it can be sued. A case can be filed against this company, and this company as a legal entity can file a case against somebody else, can file a case against a person or any other legal entity. So this is what we mean by legal entity. If an entity has the legal right to sue and it can be sued by others. The cases can be filed by it and cases can be filed against it. Now, what was the plea? Plea was saying that the legal entity status should be granted to animals. Why this status? Why this demand? According to the pleader, there have been increasing incidents of cruelty on animals, and the person was alleging that the existing laws are insufficient to address the problem of animal cruelty. They are insufficient to protect the animals from abuse and cruelty. In this context, it was also alleged that rights of the animals, they exist only on papers. We have this Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. It is a very good act, but it was alleged that this law exists only on paper. We are increasingly seeing the cases of cruelty on animals. So what can be done in this regard? The applicant was pleading for legal status being granted to the animals. What would happen in that case? Say if an animal is cruelly treated, then somebody on behalf of that animal might sue the other person who is treating the animal in a inhumane, in a very cruel manner. So that was the plea of the pleader. Already, like the pleader was saying that we have the previous instances where this thing has already been done. For example, Uttarakhand High Court in 2017, it had granted the rivers Ganga and Yamuna the status of living entities. even though this verdict was later stayed by the Supreme Court. But in the similar light, in 2018, Uttarakhand High Court only, it had declared the animal kingdom, including birds and aquatic animals, as legal entity. Similarly, on this lines, in June 2019, Punjab and Haryana High Court had ruled that all animals, birds and aquatic life in Haryana would be accorded the status of legal entities. So we already have certain judgments from the high courts, and in this context, a plea was filed in Supreme Court that the legal status should be granted to animals. But what was Supreme Court's response? The general response, the general attitude of the court was that it was not inclined to positively consider this plea. The reason being, the court was giving the arguments that can animals be treated equal to humans? Court was not saying that animals do not have any rights, animals don't need to be protected, animals, like cruelty can be meted out to animals. That was not the case of the court. But court was saying that should animals be given status equal to that of humans? In that case, court had proposed that we can look into the fact that the implementation of the animal protection laws is not proper, or we can look into the fact that the punishments given under this animal protection laws, they are not having sufficient deterrent effect to deter the people from indulging in cruel acts against the animals. So these aspects, court was favorably inclined that these things could be looked into. But court was not very favorably inclined in giving the legal status to the legal entity status to the animals. Though court has given us the center to respond to the petition, but let's see like how this thing turns out. So these were some of the news that had been in news with respect to the social issues portion of your syllabus. I hope you would have enjoyed today's class. Thank you.